Hello, I'm joined today by Kenneth Jolivet. He's the author of the great book, Society Kills Men, and he's also written a number of children's books recently about topics to do with positive masculinity. And Kenneth, how are you doing?
Excellent, Ewan. Thanks for inviting me and having this chat. And yeah, looking forward to it.
Excellent, good stuff. Yeah, I was wanting to talk to you about traditionalism and about liberal society and kind of how it's been the dominant society here in the Western world, really since the 1960s. And
That's right.
so what we're seeing from there is a massive falling apart of the marriage rate. It's the
Yeah,
lowest it's ever been.
that's right.
Similarly, we're seeing a falling apart of the birth rate, and we're also seeing a rise in celibacy, especially amongst young people. So celibacy amongst young 18 to 30 people, that's increased massively within the last 10 years as well.
Yeah,
So I think there's a problem here with the new liberal system, in that I don't believe it's working for men or for women, and
no,
I believe that there's a problem with hedonism, and that it's kind of a system where the underlying ethos is do whatever you want, and so you kind of
when you
get
want. Yeah,
you say that again, sorry.
when you want, do whatever you want when you want. I think
Exactly. That seems to
quote
be
you.
the underlying ethos of the system, and
Yeah,
from there you get young men and women behaving in kind of any way they want, basically, and you get the nightclub culture, you get the Tinder dating app, and you get it. It seems to me you get a lot of disposability in relationships, and you also get a heavy consumption of alcohol and recreational drugs, and
yeah,
then you get young people sort of within that environment then trying to make their move, and it just seems that it's one night stands, it's casual hookups,
yeah.
and there's a lot of people who aren't doing particularly well in this system.
Mm,
And I'm thinking the old system, the courtship system we had before, that was undergirded by Christianity here in the UK and all over the Western world. I think that system has a lot going for it, and I think that there would be some positivity definitely if we started trying to basically promote that to young people, and also I think just try to realize that what that system does is it promotes trust between men and women, and
yeah,
so you're able to build a trusting relationship from there. Whereas
yeah.
in hookup culture, in hedonistic liberal society, I don't think there's much trust between the two genders, and I think that's why we're seeing the fall in marriage rates, the fall in birth rates, and also the increase in celibacy. So I wanted to get your thoughts on this issue.
Oh, well, that's a good summary, actually, of your fantastic ICMI 20 briefing, where you talked about this sort of stuff. And a few things come to my mind as you went through all that. First thing, as you said, the marriage rates are the lowest they've been since 1895. This is a recent statistics that has come out. And I think since the 70s, it's 42% lower. And
Mm,
it's been
mm.
dropping ever since the no-fault divorce rules came out in the early 70s.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and that all kind of fits in with the rise of feminism and the birth control pill. Um, and hence, if families, the destruction of the family and the father, single moms increasing to uh, just some local stats in England. I believe it's 48%. In America, it's in the
Mm, mm.
40s. In Europe, as a general rule, it's low 50%. And in France, single moms are at 60%. So Europe has quite a problem with single moms. And in America, the black family, it seems, has the highest rate. And I've heard stats as high as 77% with Jesse Lee Peterson on YouTube, and he has The Fallen State. He's a fantastic speaker on all these things. So yeah, it all fits in, you know, that this liberalism, feminism also coming in around that same time. So we definitely have the death of the family. And so your thesis about liberalism is going to be the destruction of society. And we're seeing it happen. And I think we've been seeing it long enough now that we've got sort of 50, 60 years of a downtrend and a destruction of all these things. But two things also kind of came up when you were talking. And I remember this, you know, this old hippie approach, live and let live, you know. And I remember doing a master's degree in real estate at Chelmsford University here in the UK. And I was a mature student because it was my third or fourth degree, and I was doing it to become a surveyor. And we're in one of these big auditoriums getting a general lecture on one of the classes subjects. And I'm sitting there and I want to learn. And I've got two or three guys behind me, a couple of seats back, having a chat about something, disrupting the class. So I turn around and say, hey, can you guys keep it down and stop talking? You know, I want to hear the lecture. A couple of words go back and forth, and I say, look, I'm here to learn. If you don't want to learn, you can leave. And the guy, what's he say? Live and let live, man. You know, that was his attitude. So that's just a small example of this kind of.
Was that the students or the teacher? Sorry.
That was the students sitting in the lecture.
Okay.
You know, yeah. So that was the kind of attitude that has filtered down, you see, of when you don't have morals or morality, and you got all this liberalism. You know, his individual right to live and let live tells me that I should put up with his nonsense. So that's another example. And then the other thing I wanted to say was, you know, I was married for 21 years, and like most men, I found myself divorced because we know that 80% of divorces are the women filing for the divorce. And it was unheard of at the time. Once you usually get to 21 years of marriage, it used to be that you were safe. You'd remain married. So I found myself divorced, and traumatic experience. And that caused me to write my first book about that kind of subject. But what I did is I went traveling for a couple of years around the globe, and managed to meet women from lots of different countries. So I went through a hedonistic phase, let's just say, of having fun traveling the world and conquering women. And I was successful. I had a really good time. I was one of those kind of males that leads into the subject of, it's another rule, the Pareto rule, 80-20 rule, that in this case, we would say that 20% of the men are getting 80% of the women. Or said another way, you could say that 80 to even 100% of the women all want the same 20% of the men. Now, that could be for just hedonistic purposes, and it certainly is true in that case, that they want the alpha males. Or when you go to marriage, it'd be the same thing. They're chasing the top 20% who have all the wealth, and, you know, these you know, we know that women want men for security reasons and money. So I went from being that trusting relationship in a marriage, morals, traditionalism, into this liberal thing of hedonism, chasing women all over the planet, 50 different countries. So I know quite a bit about women and the real kind of pillow talk, let's say, of what's going on. And then after having enough of that, I wanted to meet a good woman again. I'd had enough of this kind of chaos and hedonism. So I found myself meeting a very good woman, and would only, though, ever marry and meet up again when certain rules applied and these things were met. So yeah, 2 years ago, I got married again. And again, I find myself back into what works, as you say. It's good for society. And it's good for the man, it's good for the woman, and it's good for society. and it's based on trust.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I think there's been a serious problem with the obviously the no fault divorce laws, and that, I mean, if you see the Rick Bradford research, what he's done, or what he's showing now in the UK, is that basically either party can end the marriage whenever they want now, and
right.
there's pretty much nothing to the contract. It's just something that can be
Yeah,
voided at any point, and
yeah,
so that it's undermined it significantly, because what it used to mean, in the and I guess, for people who are more strongly religious, what it still means is that it is a contract that lasts until you die,
yeah,
till death do us part. And
yeah,
that's what I think, what worked so well, in our country's past, and helped to build the West, was the fact that this institution was, it was an incredibly strong, powerful, binding institution, for thousands of years. And
yeah,
that meant that you kind of, from there, created the foundation where you could bring a family into the world, and the family, there will be a strong foundation for the family to grow. And so the children, would have a loving father and mother present, and they would be able to grow up under their care. But obviously, now that the within liberal society, it's all falling apart, and this institution of marriage has just been completely wrecked by the movement of feminism, and
yeah.
I'd say by the liberal society generally. And
But
the other point you brought up, I'll just mention this, was
okay,
it was the bit about the massive rise in single mum families, and that's all been caused by the welfare system. And it's a system that benefits a woman, usually, primarily working class background, and she's given, extra money and resources if she has a child or children out of wedlock. And a
yeah,
lot of the time, the more children she has, the more money and resources she can get. So,
yeah,
I mean, it's a completely crazy system, because it's the most insane, perverse incentive scheme I think I've ever heard of.
yeah,
It doesn't actually lead to her making any sensible decisions whatsoever, and the quality of the children, the quality of their childhood is not going to be good in that situation, when they're growing up in the system where there's all of these extremely destructive incentives going on. And like you're seeing a lot of children in these single mum households, and the mum is going through a string of boyfriends, and there's abuse, there's drug taking, there's all of these absolutely terrible activities happening, and the children aren't doing well. And what we're seeing now as well, in the UK and elsewhere, is a massive rise in the increase in the size of the foster care system.
yeah,
So a lot of the children are then being taken away from, say, the single mum, or whoever else it is, and they're going into the foster care system, and it's all various foster carers who are being paid to look after them, and a lot of them go from one placement to another, and so it's they end up with really poor life outcomes as well, like
yeah,
huge amounts of mental health problems, and drug and alcohol issues, and you name it. And
yeah,
it seems as though it's all just destroying this foundation of the nuclear family, and which is all based, or for pretty much all of our history in the West, is based on the idea that one man and one woman form a family, and they have their children, and they raise their children well. And that has been the bedrock of the civilization. So
mm,
it's so sad that we've seen so much of this falling apart. And Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. See what you make of that.
Well, there's a lot in that as usual,
Yeah,
isn't there?
yeah.
I guess a few things. You mentioned the welfare state and the system, and I think it's been documented that England actually has one of the highest single mother benefit systems, and the state actually promotes
Mhm.
uh, making this single mom type of thing because um, you get benefits, and in fact, what you have a situation where the state and these benefits enable the mother, and it promotes this lifestyle. And the same thing happened with the Black family in America. Uh, Almost the same kind of analogy that you've got the single mom here in the UK versus the single Black mother in America. And it was the
Mhm.
government benefits. In fact, a very interesting story about how that happened in America, that um, you weren't allowed to have a man in the house. So the woman, to get the benefits, literally could not have a boyfriend, certainly couldn't have any kind of man living there or make it look like he was living there.
Yeah,
Otherwise, they
yeah.
lose their benefits. So it is definitely true that the state can promote single motherhood, and it can also promote getting rid of the man and the father. And we know that Dr. Warren Farrell wrote The Boy Crisis and all the damage that can happen when kids don't have a father. And fatherlessness is probably one of the biggest problems facing most Western nations. Um, Now, just two that come off the top of my head is when you have fatherlessness, you have violent, angry boys because they're hurt, you know,
Mhm.
and they have no role model, no positive role model. They have no mentors. And we know that primary schools are 90% female teachers. So it's well known that where is a boy going to get any kind of male role model if he's not getting it by his father? So that's a big problem. And then what you get there is, like we said, you get angry, violent, hurt boys who have no self-esteem, low self
Mhm.
identity, male identity, um, this kind of stuff. And then what do you get with girls? Well, the longer you have a time with a girl who doesn't have a father around, as she grows up, she has very low self-esteem, and she's going to be more than likely very promiscuous. So this doesn't help the girl, or it goes into the kind of thing you're talking about with hookup culture with
Mhm.
both of them. And then you get boys joining gangs and doing drugs. It all leads to problems. So there's that side of things. And then the other thing I wanted to touch on was this marriage thing about vows. Do you remember when you said your vows back then? Like you said, it was a lifelong thing if you were going to get married, till death do us
Mhm.
part. It's a
Yeah, yeah.
long slogan. And to honor and obey in sickness and in health, all this kind of stuff. What happened? The feminists wanted to get rid of those lines, and they did. I remember I got married again 2 years ago, and they sit there and go through what you're allowed to say and not say, and it's a state contract, right? And so they got rid of these kind of expressions and slogans. So words are important, and if you when you're saying these kind of words, when you're saying those kind of words already, by not taking them seriously and committing to it, you've already said that basically this is a temporary affair. There's nothing permanent about it.
Where did you get married the second time? Was it
Here
church
in
or registry
here,
office or?
registry office. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
So the state contract,
Mm.
yeah, it was very clear, and they certain things they made you say. You had a few choices, but remember, I got married in 1986 the first time.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and it was a different way of saying things even back then.
Sure,
Um,
sure.
so over, let's say, 30 years,
That
it,
was also registry office, or was that church?
that was also registry type thing.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And
So
so
comparing
so what
apples and
yeah,
apples,
what was the differences, if you're able to expand on that?
I think, from memory, I just remember it being, I remember at the time, my wife at that time in 86 having to use the word honor and obey, for example. That was still in the clause, in the contract. Now I'm pretty sure that was gone, you know, and you had choices of what you would say and how you would say it. And I don't remember the current phrase that they were very clear that you had to get right also. But what struck me this time, when I was young and naive at 22, when I got married the first time, it was just a blur, you know, and you did what you did. But when I read the words this time and went through it, you could actually make sense and see that it was a contract with the state. And so you knew it wasn't so much with the woman. You just knew you had a duty to the state. If you got it wrong, you were going to be punished by the state. Hence family law and the destruction.
Right.
The destruction of the
seems mainly if you're a man that's the case.
Yes. So you're disposable also. So
yeah.
you know, these things, if you treat something with without seriousness, then what are you going to get? You're not going to get a seriousness in the act of marriage. So, you know, you're essentially treating a relationship like toilet paper. It's disposable, you know, it's there's no value in it. Yeah.
And I mean, I think, you know, that there is that kind of attitude that unfortunately has filtered through the culture. And I mean, I guess in drama as well, you know, there's just a lot of, you know, completely sort of couples where there's wild fighting and then they fall apart. And then there's lots of promotion of divorce and stuff. And a lot of promotion of, you know, the idea that the woman can do better on her own and all of that. And you know, so I see that within the culture as well. So yeah, and then I think for a lot of young people, I think there's the one of the main problems I'm seeing is the feminization of the workplace, which is that's where a lot of industries are becoming more feminized, and they're, you know, saying that you know, that the best jobs are reserved for women, and we're going to try and get women, you know, through the system, and basically it's all going to be run in the interests of women. And from there you get these workplaces and industries that don't work, you know, that aren't functioning well. And also a lot of the time what you're seeing as well is a lot of men are leaving these professions, or they're doing them, but they're not doing so well within them, because there's not that dominance hierarchy that existed in the past in all of these industries, where, you know, a man could go into an industry in the past and then he would be able to actually rise up the dominance hierarchy, you know, through his own efforts. But certainly when I was in mental health industry, I never found that to be the case. You know, I never found it to be a kind of functioning dominance hierarchy. It always seemed that you were playing politics, and that you know, it was all about kind of covering your own back, and you know, making sure that you were, I guess, that you were well liked and that there were no allegations and all of that. And the actual, you know, promotion of competency and of doing a good job, that didn't seem to be in there. And I mean, one of the things I really liked when I found the, because I got into running a few years ago, and one of the things I really liked about that was that it was a you know, just a good old fashioned dominance hierarchy. And as a sport, it's you know, for the most part, it's pretty much dominated by the men, because they're the ones who put in more effort. Not all of them, but there's a substantial number of them who, you know, who are pretty good amateur long distance runners, and you know, who have pretty decent times. And so it's a genuine dominance hierarchy. And when I had conversations with say a lot of the guys who were better or at the same standard as me, what I liked was that the conversations were real, you know, and it was you were actually because you know, we were all headed towards our own goal, but you know, it's all similarities in terms of the journey. And So, you know, it was an actual tangible skill that we were talking about, and you know, we're trying to get better at. And so there was a realness to that, and I found that not to be the case in when I was working in the mental health industry. I'm not sure if you had, you know, through your research for your book, if you had seen similar patterns there.
Yeah, in fact, it's one of the chapters in my last book, Society Kills Men, but I'm going to touch on that in a sec. But you probably don't know, I'm also a fellow runner. In fact, just to touch with you and relate to you and bond with you a bit on running, I ran for the U.S. Air Force team against all the other services for a couple of events. I was a pretty good 400-meter runner. In fact,
Nice.
in fact, my 400-meter times are pretty much on the world record women's 400-meter times. So
Okay, nice.
so in high school, and I wasn't the best, you know, I was one of the best and I was at a high level, but let's just say my times still, even today, would equate to roughly the women's, you know, Olympic gold medal times sort of thing. And the same thing, I was a pole vaulter, and my pole vaulting high school heights were the same roughly, only recently. And this is due to technology with the poles, the materials they use for these poles are they're more flexible, more bendy, more performance out of these things. And my pole vaulting things would pretty much meet the world record for women's pole vaulting. And this was when I was in high school, barely learning it, you know, it was new to it.
Yeah.
Picked up in no time. So that just kind of gives you an idea about, you know, competition, biological abilities, and all this kind of stuff. So this whole narrative about, you know, women can beat men, and then it goes to, there was a recent article on Twitter, in fact, about firemen, fire women. I think it was Sweden again. They lowered, the feminists were complaining that they couldn't be proper firemen. And so they lowered the standard. And the example I remember reading was they went from having to carry 100-kilo ladder, and that's heavy, even for me, manipulating a ladder at that, you know, I have no problem bench pressing that kind of weight, but giant ladder, the leverage, that's heavy. So I don't know how any woman would be able to do that, for example. But what they did say is you would have to carry a certain body weight person over your shoulder and carry them a certain distance. And they eliminated that, and they simply said that you only had to pick up, I think it was a 30-kilo weight over your head kind of thing. So you went from carrying a body to a third. So they severely lowered the standard.
So you had to initially carry the 100-kilo ladder, and then it went to a 30-kilogram weight that you just had to
and a body carry. So let's say I had to. So let's say you're burning in the building, and I would have to put your body over my shoulder. If you weighed 80 kilos, I should be able to carry you 80 kilos for a certain distance. So they had a few different parameters, tests. But it went to the very, very basics. And when I read what they had to pass, and it reminded me of my time in the Air Force, because as I said, I was in the US Air Force, and I watched from 1983 to when I retired in 2004, the standards were way, way, way lowered. Okay. So, and there was a new article, in fact, retired generals just said that the American military is not fit to fight anymore because the standards and the obesity, and it all relates to dropping standards. So not only do you, when you drop these standards, you let the women in because they, feminism says they have to be able to be there, and equality.
But is this for the infantry, say in the army, that sort of thing, is it? Or
all of them, whether it be the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Marines, the Coast Guard, all of those. firemen, police. We've watched all these standards drop, but nobody wants to try to equate how many lives have been lost because of the lowered standards. Be interesting to see a study, if anyone, it would probably never ever get published, but there's a real cost to lowering standards. And I would hate to see what that is in lives, injuries, lives not saved because something happened, all these kind of things. So there is a real cost to lowering standards, but these feminists in Sweden only cared about not the merit or the competence, getting in to say, I am a I am a firewoman. That was more important to the feminists and to the country and the whatever that occupation is as an institution, let's say. And we're being sold out by the leaders or politicians and the leaders of these industries and occupations because no one's speaking up and saying this is nonsense. So at what point does competence really, the feminists are again destroying hierarchies of competence and merit.
Yeah, I think it's completely insane because you have I guess with the military. I mean, it sounds absolutely ridiculous with that. It's clearly a male job, and I mean it's an extremely difficult job. And if you look at a lot of the wars in the past, then I mean you see a lot of guys who died there in these wars, and
98%.
Absolutely incredible courage in extremely difficult situations. And I'm fully with I'm not sure if you've heard of Ant Middleton, who he's with the SAS, and they did that recent show, I believe it was called SAS Who Dares Wins. And so it was about, they go through the training that they're required to do for that. It still seemed pretty tough and so on. But then one of his quotes was, the SAS is absolutely no place for women. It's men who go, when you go to war, it's men who are hunting and killing each other. And yes, it's not a place for a woman. So that's and I just think with all of these physical dangerous jobs, what it is it's men doing what they do well, which is they're functioning at a high level of competency in a dangerous environment, and they're using these skills that they have that are innate to them as men. And women psychologically, physiologically aren't really designed to do these roles. They're the birth, they give birth to the next generation. They're the ones who look after the young, and they're extremely sensitive to children, to other people in the local community. They act as a social glue. And I mean, what I saw in mental health nursing was just, as the wards became increasingly dominated by women, it was this inability by them to impose boundaries and standards. And so, you kind of end up in a situation where the patients are running the wards, and it's not the staff who are, they're not running anything. And so the whole thing becomes a kind of demoralized environment. And it's really sad because when it runs well, then you're actually helping the patient, and the staff are actually in control, and they're actually making the patient better, and because a lot of what we do, or should be doing in that industry, is socializing people, is saying to them, you're not really functioning at the correct level here. And, we'll try and bring you up a bit. And once we've done that, then you'll be a more productive member of society, and we'll be able to get on better with everyone else. And then we'll have a better life. But, we're not doing that anymore. And there's a lot of guys who are, and women as well, who are going through the system as patients, who are just endlessly degenerating because the approach used is too feminized. And kind of tying this back to the point that I was bringing up before, is that it's extremely sad, because it is this breakdown in gender relations that's happened here. Is that, you know, men acting as the disposable gender is what helped build humanity up as a you know, from our hunter-gatherer origins. It was you know, what allowed us to thrive on the savannah. And you know, back just back in those times, as a hunter-gatherer species, was that the males within the tribe would cooperate with each other and would work together to, when they went out hunting, when they went out scavenging. And you know, it was the success that they had that allowed our species to become the dominant species on this planet. And so, you know, that's what men do, and that's what they bring to the you know, to the species and to the tribe, is their disposability and their effort. And you know, that women's contribution is different. And I don't think you can say there's exact equality, because you know, men and women are wildly different. But women's contribution is, you know, that they create human beings, which is you know, an absolutely massive contribution. And that they, you know, they hold the they're kind of the social glue that holds the local tribe together, you know, the local community together. And you know, and I think that there's a lot that I think there's a lot of joy if you have a really strong gender relation system in place, and you when you honor traditional gender values and traditional gender roles. And obviously there can be some crossover. You know, I think it's fine to have women, you know, doing productive work in the public sphere. But equally, you know, I think we've fallen a long way as a society, and that we're not acknowledging men as the dominant gender, or the dominant gender in the public sphere. And if we were to do that, you know, I think everyone would be a lot more happy. And I think we'd also have a lot more stable relationships as well. And so I think the feminization of the workplace has been absolutely disastrous. And, you know, for many reasons. And one of the central ones actually is that, you know, I figure you definitely want the male as the one within the family who's earning more money. You know, maybe there are some families where that isn't the case, but in the vast majority of families, that is what both genders want. And that's what the woman wants, that's what the man wants. That holds the relationship together. And it's like, I'm not sure you want to you know, get rid of that all that quickly, because once you do it, it seems that it's just confusion, and it's just this kind of upside down world. So get your take on that one.
Well, there's a lot in here again. We know the first thing that comes to mind is the fact that we know from so many studies, women want to marry men who have more than they do. They want men who earn more money than they do. Even when they're a top earner, the women still want that. Now, why is that? And what backs that up? Well, we know that the most divorced man is an unemployed man, or a man who lost his job, you know, while married. So that's the most divorced man. The most man who won't get married in the first place is a poor man, okay? And who is the man who's most likely to get married? The man who has wealth. So every piece of data you look at, no matter how you swing it, it all relates to this basic premise that women want a man that earns more money than he does. Doesn't mean necessarily that she doesn't want to earn any money. And then the other stats is part-time versus full-time. 62% of the breadwinners, 62% of the women are working part-time, okay? And the breadwinners are the majority of men, again, most of the time. And we also know that men like to provide and protect. There's no question about that. That goes hand in hand. Provide and protect. That's what men like to do. It builds our self-esteem. It makes us feel good. And it's complementary to the woman wanting to feel the need and be looked after and have security. Now, a lot of times when the woman earns more money than the man, and you have the man, they call him, let's say, the stay-at-home dad who's an artist. The woman very quickly, in no time at all, thinks she has a third child, for example. She doesn't enjoy giving the man any money that she makes at work. It's her money. That's how that's the mentality, that it's her money, and that the husband is now, even though he's home doing what she might want him to do, look after the children and be a modern dad, let's say, she loses respect for him. She loses attraction and love for him. So as soon as a woman loses respect for her man, that's it. The marriage is done. The sex is gone. Bettina Arndt talks about sex-starved husbands, and all this kind of stuff. So these things are all interrelated. So that's the first thing I would say about that part of it. Another one, you talked about tribes and what we did in the past, and it's really interesting. Across the globe, the one thing that tribes often did was to break in the young males. Mm-hmm. And what they meant by break in a young male are two things. You had to take the boy away from the mother, that dependence and that love and that nurturing. You had to get the boy away from mother. And the second thing is you had to teach him to meet his fear. And so a very interesting story about one particular tribe was the men of the tribe would take the boy out when he's sort of 12, 13, hitting puberty. They would steal the boy out of the mother's tent in the middle of the night when it's scary as hell. And the men would all be wearing these sort of masks of gods that they kind of made up as gods of fear, that they feared, to scare the boy. And they would take this boy, they would roughhouse him in a sense of beating him up, but not to the point where you'd beat him up, silly, but
so that they're dressed up as demons, basically, is it?
Yeah, they have these masks of demons and God-fearing God type of thing. Even though they're a god, you'd fear this god, let's say, more pagan type thing or whatever. Mm-hmm. And they would beat the boy pretty good, but not enough to, like damage him in a sense of, where he wasn't capable or injured, but enough to make him fear. He didn't know what he was facing. And they would do that until then he had to fight one man. And the whole point of that was to get the boy to face his fears, because the idea was that once the boy got away from his mother and he was independent and not dependent on his mom, now he's a part of society rather than dependent on society. Mm-hmm. So that was just an interesting thing about tribes and how you would break in the boy. And the other thing I was thinking when you talk about war was, it's also well known that testosterone makes a man have less fear. He's more brave than if he has less fear, and he's also more willing to take risks. So just that extra bit of testosterone is the difference between a soldier, let's say, as a male versus a soldier who might be a female who could, okay, maybe she can carry a gun, she can shoot a gun, but it's a whole different psychology on how you approach warfare at that point. Just from the psychological, physiological side of things, if it makes me more, I can take risks, I'm less scared, I'm fear, I don't have any fear, let's say, and these kind of things, and the strength. You cannot compare that type of soldier to the other. And then the last thing is, I tell you again, the feminized space, this whole safe space thing where you're not allowed to offend a woman. You can't tell jokes. You can't create a bond. in the military, you're supposed to fight and win. And it's bad enough feminizing, say, an office space, which is a terrible thing to do for productivity, profits. Men lost all their space. You have to watch what you say. But if you do that in the military and you lose the ability to fight wars and win, well, that's a whole nother concept. And that goes back to the whole thing, like you were talking about in your briefing talk, about why is immigration becoming more and more of an issue. And if you can't fight, men trying to come in and conquer your country because you don't have tough men, because let's face it, what happened in Cologne in Germany, New Year's Eve, about, I don't know, 3-4 years ago, I think it was now. All the immigrants were attacking the German women in New Year's Eve, and none of the men would fight back. Very few. So you have really tough sort of cultural men from, on the immigration side of things, different countries and cultures. If you don't have men that can fight back, you're in real trouble. So this feminization of the workplace and the culture is a serious issue.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely been a nightmare. And I think with the point you mentioned about the with the tribes, and I just sort of say, but back then it was more of a system of the males would go out and would hunt for, say, antelope or zebras on the the African plains, and would then they would catch their quarry for the day and bring it back. And if he shared with his female a decent portion, then she would be more inclined to have sex with him that evening. And so that was how gender relations were back then. And I mean, in all fairness, we all had lower standards back then. So what then happened over time was that standards rose, and you now have a situation where there's in the West and everywhere across the world, right through history, there's a sort of expected standard of living for the culture at that point in time. And so in the West today, it's that you have a decent house, and that there's a garden, and it's in a nice neighborhood, and there's good access to a community around, and all of that. And so that's kind of the standard that we live in now. And I think until fairly recently, that's what women wanted from their male partners, in terms of him providing for her. That's what she wanted. But now the feminization of society has come along, and it's kind of twisted all of that. So that there was the huge focus on trying to get more and more women into the workplace in the 1950s, 1960s, and more recently, we're seeing the and that led to the fall of real wages for men. And then you then from there had a situation where a lot of the time the husband and the wife needed to pool their money in order to save up for a house, and also more recently, with the feminization of the workplace kind of wholesale, you also get women who are out earning their husbands now. And I think that that causes a lot of tension. And a lot of the time, they will actually make compromises, like the woman will stop doing so many days in the office so that she's making less money than the man. But I think what you're seeing generally is that there's human nature which is pushing us towards this traditional society setup. And then there's the feminism movement, which is trying to subvert all of that. And it's a that one's a bit of a disaster. And
I don't think a lot of people realize, I don't know your audience, but I don't think a lot of people realize that feminism actually was created to destroy the family. Um, it wasn't there for pure equality. So, you know, their slogan at the time was equality for women and chastity for men. You know, that was showing you their mindset. And certainly in the third wave in the 60s, 70s, they clearly stated that their goal was to basically destroy the man. And this will fit in with your liberal traditional kind of thing. So to destroy the man, how do they do that? Well, they need to destroy the family. How are you going to destroy the family? You've got to destroy the husband and the father. And then how are you going to do that? And this is the nastiest point, is that they needed to be promiscuous. So these women knew that the way to destroy the man, I mean, men are jealous. We are jealous creatures. We don't want our women, most of us don't want this polygamous, open marriage. Men are jealous, we're possessive. So if you've got loose women doing that, number one, we're not attracted to them other than, let's say, a hit and run kind of a idea when you're single. But if you're trying to catch a nice woman and a wife, the last thing you want is a promiscuous woman. And a promiscuous woman there is kind of telling you that she doesn't want to get married, right? That she's not marriage material. So these feminists, they knew what they were doing, that they're going to destroy a man and what a man wanted, which was a loving, committed, dedicated woman, and also someone that you can make a family with. You can't make a family with a promiscuous woman, because the other thing of that is, if you're cuckolded, if you don't know who the father is, you don't even know you're the father. That was the whole point. And this is when we get into Islam and some of the other religions that control women. Now we're really talking about oppression or whatever, but the reason they do it is they want to know that they're the father of that child, which is important, because many other doctors and psychologists will tell you it's important for a man to know that that child is his. Because when it's your child, you know damn well you're going to work harder for it, you're going to provide and protect, and you're going to work your butt off to look after your child. Many studies have been done, examples as simple as holding your breath. Go onto a stage, get some volunteers, ask the people to hold their breath, and do it for a stranger, do it for a stepchild. But it's funny that the people who could hold their breath the longest were the ones doing it for their own children. And Dr. Jordan Peterson talks about the same thing. He talks about one of the most dangerous relationships, or for the child, is a step parent. Having a stepdad in the house, or a strange man, if you want to even go, cohabiting kind of thing. Let's just call it a stepdad. This is the most dangerous situation you can put your children in as a single mom. And that, the reasons are obvious. You're more likely to hit them. You're more likely to have sexual, sex abuse, raping them, and this kind of thing. You won't work as hard for them. So the bond is important. So you cannot make light of blood. So just that came up while you were talking about that. So
I think I mean, absolutely extremely important points. And I think it is, it has promoted this promiscuous society. And I think that comes with the hedonistic society, the sort of underlying ethos of do whatever you want. And I found in my youth, I was I kind of went down that path for a number of years, and it was the lots of alcohol use and drug use, and it didn't work out well at all for me. And in the end, I just sort of gave all of that up. And managed to I sort of suffered from there was some cannabis psychosis. I started having that, and then so I gave that up, and then afterwards it was problems with binge drinking as well. And
Yeah.
yeah, I basically cut down on the alcohol a lot, and then ended up giving it up as well. So
Wow.
that worked out pretty well for me. And then, you know, realized afterwards, oh God, I'm saving tons of money that, you know,
Yeah.
back in the binge drinking and drug taking days, I was sort of plowing through all of the money that I was earning and stuff. And it's like, oh, well, this is no longer the case. But yeah, I think with probably, I think I probably could have been spared some of that if I had had some better spiritual teaching. I think when I was younger, if I, you know, for instance, if I'd heard more Jordan Peterson videos when I was, say, in my early 20s or something, then I think that would have gotten me to really start considering this. But I think that is what you're getting there is this kind of tough-minded patriarchal society that, you know, they're promoting in a just in terms of, you know, the approach of like yeah, you need to sort yourself out, clean your room, all of
Yeah.
that. And I think that you know, I kind of grew up in more of a feminized culture, and so that was much weaker to young men. And so, you know, it's not kind of forcing them down these channels where they're trying to make something that is you know, trying to sort of make something solid of their life, you know, where they're actually trying to achieve something. I think, you know, the more feminized system of I'll kind of do what you want. And what was that phrase you used earlier? You know, live and let live, wasn't it?
Live and let live. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
So I think that in a way it naturally leads a lot of young people, I'd say, to getting into the more hedonistic, you know, lifestyle. And then, yeah, and then it's just a bunch of other institutions like marriage and, you know, the feminized society. And so it's kind of a rotted society. And within that, I think you're getting a lot of promiscuity. And I think in that system as well, there's a lot of guys who then struggle within that because you know, it's for them, it's all based on sexual prowess. For women, it's more based on sexual attractiveness, and
yeah,
with a little bit of sexual prowess in there.
yeah.
Guys, probably a little bit of attractiveness, and then mainly sexual prowess.
I would
So
also call it sexual power. I think women know they have power because
yeah,
they know
yeah, yeah.
they learn very quickly the sexual power. And
Mm-hmm.
you have to know they're playing with their father first. They understand their power, and then as their adolescence, they get the attention, they get the looks, they get the desire. They can see men coming after them. Young women, adolescent, they learn very quickly what their sexual power is, and I think
Yeah, yeah.
that feels good to a young woman to know she can get a man twice her age or more to
Mm-hmm.
almost do anything, you know, this kind of thing. So yeah, prowess if you're the confident alpha man, and then this young
Yeah,
woman
yeah.
who, as you said, what did you say, sexual
A lot of it for them, I figured, was sexual attractiveness, and then
yeah,
a
which is
little bit
power.
of sexual prowess as well, and that would be them, you know,
Yeah.
the way they um interact in social situations in order
But
to
But
yeah, yeah.
think of the word attractiveness. Attractive is attraction. You're pulling something towards you because
Yes, yeah.
you have that power. You have the
Mm,
power like a
mm-hmm.
magnet to pull things to you. So yeah, there was something I just recalled as you were talking. You know, I know you're into morality, traditionalism, liberalism.
Mm,
This is the
mm.
subject. Now I remember growing up because I'm a bit older than you, but I remember being younger and in that time growing up in the late 60s, 70s, in this whole idea of free love and liberalism. I mean, I was born in 64, so I didn't quite make the swinging 60s kind of thing, but
Sure, sure.
the 70s. But all this, I remember the whole concept of lefty kind of approach, liberalism. And you couldn't understand, it was really hard to say it was wrong. And Jordan Peterson talks about this. It's hard to know when the left has gone too far because it all sounds like it's love and it's good. And what's the problem? And I remember talking to my kids, I've got 3 kids and they're all grown up, two boys and a girl. And they always ask question, well, what's wrong with this? What's wrong with this liberal thing? What's wrong with smoking pot? What's wrong with having sex? Why can't a woman have sex as much as a man? Because, all these questions sound like they're really hard to answer, right? But if you answer them from, let's say, a religious, biblical perspective, conservative perspective, and especially with what you talked about in your talk, conservatism, liberalism is chaos. Conservatism is protecting things that worked, good and bad, evil, good and evil. They make sense. So conservatism is extremely important, especially with the premise of what you were talking about. Liberalism destroys a society. It will never survive. Conservatism and morals will allow the society to continue going. And because it's creating babies, and like you said earlier, women have been given the gift of childbirth, giving life. And it is also, as you said, giving birth is a responsibility because you have a responsibility to create the next generation. Now, women do that by giving birth, but men do that by providing and protecting, and more importantly, committing to the marriage. Now, women say, oh, what's the big deal? Marriage is good for both men and women. But guess what? Most men would not get married without the pressure from society. So it was always really important to give in and commit to a woman and your family. And the way you do that is because you have children. The man wants to look after that family, and so getting a man to commit and just being in the household is a very big commitment, to the not only the kids, the woman, the marriage, and society and the community. And that becomes a whole country at some point. If people aren't doing that, and it's liberal, as you said, you're done and society's done, it won't replicate. So who do you bring in? Immigrants. Now all of a sudden you're mixing the blood and which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but you now require someone else who's giving higher birth rates.
Well, it's a different culture, isn't it? And then culture. It seems that the winners in that game is the culture that has the highest birth rates and also that looks after their children best. So,
exactly. And do we want that?
So it's those two factors that determine successful societies.
Exactly.
A, is it having enough children, that society, and B, is it raising them well? Because if it gets both of those things right, then it's a culture that expands and prospers and survives over time. And that's exactly what you want, really. And
that's the answer. So this is the big question then. Do you owe your life to doing whatever you want, or do we need pressure from society to make us do the right thing? Because if we don't do the right thing, you're obliterated. You're no longer there. So what's the primary mission here? And these institutions and conservatism is extremely important to get you to do the right thing. And an interesting thing is, religion, why do we pray? People pray with a religion because it becomes a daily reminder to do the right thing. Because if you don't do it daily, you forget real fast. So the dismal tide, you've heard of it. You drop the first thing, you stop saying sir and ma'am, the rest is sure to follow, to quote a fantastic film. Essentially, every time you lose a standard or what do you call it, custom, a courtesy, civility, you're going downhill real fast.
Yeah, I absolutely agree on that one, and I think it is a society that doesn't really care for itself, the liberal society, and it doesn't have the boundaries and standards, and I think with the kind of instant gratification lifestyle of promiscuity and drug taking and high alcohol usage and all of that, there's the idea that you'll enter some amazing mental state from from taking these substances or from engaging in this um, sexual activity or whatever, and so it's all about reaching this state or reaching that state, but
Yeah,
then it's not really looking at the 5-year picture of
exactly.
what will happen to you over time
Yeah,
if you continue to
right.
engage in this lifestyle. And from there, what we see is that I mean, with the drug taken, is young people dying from heart attacks, and having other medical emergencies, or ending up in with kind of psychosis, that sort of thing, sometimes permanent brain damage. And I think with the promiscuity as well, that's a corruption of the soul. And and I think there's the other side of that as well, which is probably with the I'd say if you've got the 80-20 thing going on, then there's the other pressure for a lot of the guys who aren't doing so well in that system. They then turn to porn, and I think that's another corruption of yourself as well. And
Yeah,
so it's all a bunch of sinful behavior that is just endemic within this liberal society. And I mean, I've recently converted to Christianity, and so I think it's a fantastic system for actually doing well in your own life. I tried not to make too many arguments where I promote the authority of God or Jesus
yeah.
during these discussions, but I don't know. Were you a Christian? Was it or?
Well, I was raised a Catholic,
Okay,
um,
yeah,
but I was young and I just followed along the lines of things. So I have an awareness of it, but no, I'm not.
yeah.
I'm not religious, but I'm not anti-religious either. I think religion, the older I get, I
Mm,
realize that it's extremely important because of it gives you structure. It obviously gives you morality, but I don't like it when it gets to the point of when the religion starts to judge other people too much, which is what you find that everyone thinks they're the right religion. The Jews
yeah,
think they
yeah,
have the best system, and that and then the Islam thinks they have it, and then you got the Catholics that also, when they get to the radical side of things, they're very judgmental. They don't want to mix with the others. They think they're the
yeah,
right
yeah,
one, the truth one. Um, when you start wearing your clothes to display it, you're making an announcement. You
yeah,
may be
yeah.
doing it as a personal whatever, but at the same time, you cannot deny that you're broadcasting to the world who you are, what group you are, and let's not forget what communication is.
Mm,
Most of the
mm.
communication, 75% of communication is nonverbal. So these are powerful things when you do that. But
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah.
that's going off again on the
No,
side of
no,
religion. But it's
fair
really
enough.
good
I
because it
think
provides the
there
structure.
is there
Yeah,
is that risk. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I mean, yeah, because it's a bit of a tightrope because the structure is but by actually promoting that and by promoting a more honest way of living and a more spiritually rich way of living, and also kind of
yeah,
re-establishing the tribe as well.
yeah.
I think there's a lot that's gained from that, but then yes, there is a problem of when, say, a particular religion starts promoting quite dark practices, or yeah, it kind of gets into purity spiraling as well,
I
where
think
it
if you,
decides that other people, like maybe outside of the group, they're all wrong and so on, and
Right. I think the
that
more
sort of thing.
specific, the more specific you get, the more you'll get into trouble. But if you can keep it broad on like good and evil and the good parts of things and, the lessons, I remember, I definitely enjoyed the sermons, let's say, if you put it into a real life example about this thing and how it can benefit you, or how this thing can be really bad for you or society. These kind of lessons are powerful. So from that side of things, if you can keep it quite applicable, general, and don't start
Yeah,
getting into
yeah.
the weeds about, these kind of things, then religion is fantastic, and it gives hope and faith and all these things. So yeah, there's a lot of power in these religions.
Mm-hmm. I do. I think one of the things that we've lost in the West is just the community aspects of it, of the local
Yeah,
community coming together and
yeah,
worshiping together, and the singing, and then the sermons, and
sense of
it seems that
community.
in
Yeah.
turning away from it, a lot of people have just gone down this individualist direction, and I do think that life becomes richer when we are a collective, and essentially we are a tribal species, and
Well,
it
yeah,
really does. When you start to see the tribe, and people are actually within that and they're helping each other out, then
yeah,
I
yeah.
think you've got something that's quite wonderful there.
There's no question. You've heard of
Yeah,
Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Once you've got your survival and your safety needs,
yeah.
you start to want to belong to something. And
Hmm.
that sense of belonging is extremely important to our mental health and well-being. Sense of community, as you say. There was a famous TV program called Cheers, and everybody wants to know your name, right?
Yeah,
It
yeah.
feels good when someone says, "Hey, hi, Ewan, how are you? Hi, Ken,
Mm-hmm.
how are you?" You're walking down the street. That's why I love where I live. I walk down, I know everyone because I'm very central, and go have a coffee, and just that little hello, that sense of community. So yeah, it's very important. And if the church gives that, which I know and I remember that as a key feature of
Yeah, yeah.
my mom's existence as a religious person, and my sister and my other brother, they had that huge sense of community and sense of belonging.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's essential, and I mean, I'd say it's related to the just looking at it from a sociological perspective, because we are back when we were hunter gatherers for the last 6 to 8 million years, we were a tribal species, and so the size of the tribe increased from around 55 members when we had a common ancestor with chimpanzees to 150 members when we were Homo sapiens. But
Yeah,
it is that, the entire time we spent during that period, we were a tribal species. And, so it's just a case of, just a tight knit community where everyone knows each other and
yeah,
everyone has each other's backs. And,
yeah,
I think you get that with religion. I think I can't see many other institutions that promote that. I don't. Maybe I'm wrong, but I really all I can see is because within religion you have the the meta hero and the narrative, and you're all striving to be like the meta hero, and that
yeah,
draws everyone together. Um, in Christianity, it's Jesus, obviously. In
yeah, right.
Islam, it's Muhammad, and then I guess with the Jews, they have a number of individual figures within their religion, isn't it? And it's primarily God who they worship. But
Yeah,
it's
and
all it's always the that combining narrative that brings everyone together. And I think what we're doing is we're emulating the conditions that we lived in as earlier hunter-gatherers.
yeah,
So I mean that's the sociological side of it. And yeah, I sort of I just think that it's it's so vital that whether it's done through religion, or if other people can find another means of doing it, that the local community is preserved. Because when you have it, you really are able to actually look after other people and make sure that they're doing well. And
Yeah,
and I think from there you then get the system of monogamy as well, which also existed when we were earlier hunter gatherers. That was kind of in place ever since we were Homo erectus 1.9 million years ago. So we've got
yeah,
this 2 million year span as a monogamous species, and
yeah,
it's because we're able to no other species is able to contemplate something like revenge, whereas we are. And
yeah,
so we have that cognitive capacity to hold grudges against other people. And
yeah,
so, as a result, you have a justice system that forms, and you also have a monogamous system that forms. And what they do is they ensure that there's order within the tribe,
yeah.
within the community. And I don't know. Yeah, I'm guessing what I'm seeing through a lot of the liberal societies, it gets rid of all of it, and then it's complete chaos after that. But I mean, that's sort of my thoughts on this. Probably my final thoughts on this, because I know you wanted to be away, wasn't it? But I do.
Yeah.
Is there anything you wanted to quickly add to that, or?
Well, it did remind me of one thing. As we developed from early human beings, the community had to learn a sense of trust amongst each other, right? And you needed to know who you could rely on and trust as things got bigger and bigger and bigger. It's interesting that, dialect and things like this, and even color of skin, depending on the scale you want to talk about, that's how a people knew, or a tribe knew, to trust the people within that community. And the community doesn't like freeloaders, and people coming in stealing or not doing their fair share and all these kind of things. So as the size of the community got bigger, it was these kind of things that let the people know you could trust that one. So when you had a handshake, or they're not going to come in and rape your wife, and things like this. And a simple thing is just your accent, and look at the UK. You got a lot of different accents, and dialects, and that kind of gives you a sense of these kind of things. So it's very interesting, evolutionary psychology and that side of things. But the other thing that struck me as you spoke before we wrap it up was, you talk about having a bit of time for yourself when you were drinking and doing things. And, it struck me that maybe, 1, 2, 3 years is perhaps not a bad time for a person to drift off from conservatism and doing good, because, you want to go and explore. So as a short-term thing, okay, these things can happen, right? It's not going to destroy society. So we know that, okay, maybe some of these things are acceptable to learn and to grow as a person. And then you come back to what is good and what works. So on a long-term strategy, we know we have to have conservatism, morality, traditionalism. Otherwise, we all perish and we don't exist anymore. So, but you got that is that short-term thing, and then you get the long term. So just kind of popped up in my head that, doesn't mean we can't have a bit of individualism, liberalism within a small portion, but ultimately you've got to have that maturity, that conservatism, the good structure and all of that. You're always going to have a bit of a black sheep here and there, right? Everyone perhaps gets to be the black sheep for a short period of time, and then you come back to the flock. And so that's my kind of closing thoughts, other than the books with bringing it back to boys and healthy well-being. My latest adventure is with Brilliant Bob and his adventures on positive masculinity. So Brilliant Bob is brave. Brilliant Bob is competitive. Brilliant Bob is stoic. Brilliant Bob is strong. Brilliant Bob is persistent. So I've kind of gone into these masculine traits that have always been kind of more stereotypical to boys and masculinity, and that are good for boys. Now,
he grows as a character, is it?
Yeah, he starts off as Brilliant Bob is brave.
Okay.
And he gets his bravery and courage.
Right.
And then each of these books and traits is going to teach young boys the positive side of being male and having these kind of male traits and what it can do for him, and to bond with his father as well. So these are bedtime stories, illustrated books, but yeah, they're really important because the way we've denigrated maleness and masculinity and fathers and being male, I think, what's that old, the Jesuit, you give me a boy till the age of 7, I'll give you a man. I want to get to the boys while they're young. And when I say young, I'm writing these books for primarily 4 to 8-year-olds, but a 2-year-old could look at them and get the idea from the pictures, because it's fantastic things about riding wheelies and going. Brilliant Bob takes a risk, for example. He's got to join the school's diving team. It's kind of scary diving. I don't know if you ever have done it. You can hit your head, you can belly flop, you can embarrass yourself in all kinds of ways. So it's taking boys through things they like to do, learning to ride a wheelie on the bike. This is persistence, trying to learn that. Learning your times tables. This takes persistence. So anyway, I'm trying to get to the boys young, give them a chance to be read a story by their father or whatever male figures in their life, primarily, and then teach them about these masculine traits, have a discussion with the father, and be proud and get your self-esteem about masculinity and being male. So getting to them early.
That's great. So I'll link to your children's books and also your book, Society Kills Men. So thank you, Kenneth Jolivet.
No, pleasure. Thanks for having me.